You know what's weird about hitting $500,000 in investments? Everyone talks about the first 100,000 like it's this massive psychological barrier, and it is. Then they talk about reaching a million, like that's when you've officially made it. But nobody really talks about 500,000, and honestly, that might be the most important milestone of all because $500,000 is where something genuinely shifts. It's not just a number on a screen anymore. It's not just progress toward some distant goal. At 500,000, the math changes, the psychology changes, and if you're paying attention, the entire trajectory of your life starts to change. My name is Chris, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, financial psychology, and why some people seem to effortlessly build wealth while others stay stuck in the same financial patterns for decades. And what I've come to understand is that $500,000 isn't the halfway point to a million. It's actually the inflection point where your money starts doing more of the heavy lifting than you do. And once you cross that threshold, if you understand what's actually happening, everything about how you think about work, time, risk, and freedom fundamentally transforms. So let's start with the most obvious thing that changes, and it's something you can literally see in the numbers. At $500,000 invested, assuming you're getting something like a 7 to 8% average annual return, which is pretty standard for a diversified stock portfolio over the long term, you're generating somewhere between $35,000 and $40,000 per year in growth. That's not a percentage anymore. That's not theoretical. That's real money. That's more than a lot of people earn working full-time jobs. And here's what makes this so psychologically powerful. You didn't work for that money. You didn't trade your time or energy or stress for it. It just appeared because you had money invested, and the market did what the market does. Your investments are now earning what feels like a salary, and that fundamentally changes the equation of your life. You start realizing that every year you let that money sit there and compound, it's like you're getting paid a full year's salary for doing absolutely nothing. The first 100,000 might earn you 7 or 8,000 a year, which is nice, but doesn't feel life-changing. But 40,000, that's rent. That's groceries, that's bills, that's a significant chunk of what it costs to just exist. And this leads directly to the second thing that changes, which is something I call the flexibility threshold. At $500,000, you're not financially independent yet. Not for most people anyway, but you're at what I think of as financial flexibility. You have options now that simply didn't exist before. You can take a lower paying job that you actually enjoy because your investments are covering a meaningful portion of your living expenses. You can take 6 months off to travel or retrain or just reset without it being a financial catastrophe. You can start a business and give it time to actually work instead of needing immediate income. You can say no to opportunities that don't align with what you actually want because you're not desperate for every paycheck. And this is huge because up until this point, most people are trapped by the need for constant income. They can't afford to take risks. They can't afford to make moves that might pay off long term but cost them short term. But at 500,000, you've got breathing room, you've got runway, you've got the ability to make decisions based on what you want, not just what you need, and that's a completely different way to live. The third thing that changes, and honestly this one surprised me when I first really understood it, is the speed of wealth accumulation. People think wealth building is linear, like you save 10,000 a year, so in 10 years you'll have 100,000, in 50 years you'll have 500,000, whatever. But that's not how it works at all because of compound interest. The first 100,000 might take you 8 or 10 years to build, grinding and saving and being disciplined. The second 100,000 might take 5 years. The third 100,000 maybe 3 or 4 years. But once you hit 500,000, the next 100,000 might take 18 months, maybe less. Because at this point, your money is growing so fast that even without adding a single dollar, it's accumulating wealth faster than most people can save. And if you're still contributing, if you're still adding $500 or $1,000 a month on top of that $500,000 base, the growth becomes almost absurd. You're essentially combining your salary with your investment salary, and together they're building wealth at a pace that would have seemed impossible when you were starting from zero. This is what people mean when they say the first 100,000 is the hardest. It's not just psychological, it's mathematical. The game genuinely gets easier the more you have because compound interest works on scale. But here's where it gets really interesting, and this is the part I don't think people talk about enough. At 500,000, your relationship with risk completely transforms. When you have 10,000 or 50,000 invested, a market crash feels terrifying. You watch your account drop 20% and you see thousands of dollars evaporate, and it's emotionally brutal. But at 500,000, a 20% drop is $100,000. That sounds horrible, right? Except here's the thing. You've now been investing long enough to have seen this happen before. You've watched your portfolio go up and down. You've experienced volatility, and more importantly, you have enough wealth that you're not dependent on withdrawing it immediately. So what looks like a devastating loss to someone just starting out is actually an opportunity to you. You know that markets recover. You know that downturns are temporary, and you have the financial cushion to wait it out, or even better, to keep buying while everything's on sale. This is what separates people who build serious wealth from people who stay stuck. At 500,000, you've got enough to weather the storms, which means you can actually take advantage of them instead of being destroyed by them. And then there's the psychological shift, which might be the most important change of all. At $500,000, you stop feeling poor. I know that sounds obvious, but hear me out. For most of your wealth building journey, even when you're doing everything right, you still feel broke. You're saving aggressively, which means you're not spending much. You're watching other people buy new cars and take expensive vacations while you're packing lunch and driving your paid off Honda. You're doing the right things, but it doesn't feel like you're winning. But at 500,000, you look at your net worth and you can't deny it anymore. You're wealthy. Not billionaire wealthy, but you have more money than the vast majority of people will ever accumulate. And that psychological shift changes how you make decisions. You stop operating from scarcity. You stop feeling like you need to grab every opportunity or worry constantly about money. You start operating from abundance, which sounds like some self-help nonsense, but is actually incredibly practical. When you're not stressed about money, you make better long-term decisions. You think more clearly, you take smarter risks. You stop chasing get-rich-quick schemes because you can see that you're already on a path that works. Look, here's what really changes after your investments hit $500,000, and I need you to really understand this. It's not just that you have more money, it's that you've crossed the threshold where your money works harder than you do. Where compound interest has reached critical mass, where your financial life stops being about survival and starts being about designing the life you actually want. At 500,000, you're not at the finish line, but you can see it from where you're standing. You know that if you just keep doing what you've been doing, staying disciplined, staying invested, letting time do its work, financial independence isn't some distant dream anymore. It's a realistic outcome. And that knowledge, that certainty changes everything. So if you're on your way to 500,000, keep going. The game is about to change in ways you can't fully appreciate until you get there. And if you've already crossed it, take a second to realize what you've actually built. Because $500,000 isn't halfway to $1 million. It's the point where you've won the hardest part of the game, and everything from here gets easier. Don't waste it. Don't pull back now, because the next 500,000 is closer than you think, and the life you actually want is sitting right on the other side of staying consistent. If this changed how you see your financial journey, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. And if you're still working toward that first 100,000 and wondering why it feels so hard, check out the 3 money habits that quietly keep you broke. It'll show you exactly what's holding you back. I'll see you in the next one.